Oh man, so it has happened. Shawn Porter officially replies to Bob Arum, and he shoots down the $1 million offer with Terence Crawford to fight Terence Crawford. Says you're gonna have to do better than that. I'll fight Terence Crawford, but you gotta do better. He says that it's also says $1 million simply isn't enough, especially when you paid Kell Brook more. Why? And he says it's a tactic to get out of the fight and prevent the fight from even happening. We're gonna talk about all that and more in this video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to my channel for the latest and greatest. Shawn Porter on his podcast, he had a response for Bob Arum. Says he's not taking it to Terence Crawford for $1 million. Pause. This is a direct quote, and I'll read some pull quotes, give more of my thoughts. I said it before. I will not fight Terence Crawford for $1 million. You paid Kell Brook $2 million. That was what was reported to fight Terence Crawford. What makes Kell Brook worth more than Shawn Porter at this point in time, especially in the United States? I get it. For a lot of people, $1 million is a lot of money. However, with that money that I've been able to make, I understand the business of boxing. To even begin negotiations at $2 million is an insult. Everybody in the sport of boxing knows the welterweight division is the hottest boxing in boxing. And if anything, second to heavyweight. We command a lot of money and attention. This fight would do all that and more. $1 million isn't chump change to somebody else, but to Shawn Porter, it's chump change. Ooh, he said that's chump change. He goes on to say, I guarantee that if fans are in the stands, that we will fill up whatever stadium you want the fight to take place at. If we do a pay-per-view, we're going to sell more pay-per-views than Terence Crawford has ever sold before, because now he's fighting Shawn Porter and I am a pay-per-view draw. You know, the only way you can stay away from Shawn Porter and justify it is by saying that $1 million isn't chump change. You really don't want Terence Crawford to have that fight, end quote. Link in the description so you guys can hear more from Shawn Porter himself and his thoughts. I want to give you some of my thoughts as well. I wholeheartedly agree. I feel you got to understand, in boxing, there are more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to shoot a gat, as Tupac said. There's more than one way to duck a fight. There's more than one way to get out of having to fight someone. And we've seen all the tactics if you watch boxing for any length of time. Asking for a number that you know is ridiculous, lowballing an opponent. You see, even the Ryan Garcia, he talked up Gervonta Davis and said he was next, and if Tank doesn't fight him next, he's a coward and his legacy will forever be tainted and tarnished. And then now he's talking about fighting Manny Pacquiao, which really doesn't make too much sense, right? But these are all tactics that are employed through boxing to stay away from certain fights. You know, saying this guy doesn't have a fan base, saying this guy's not worth the money, he hasn't branded himself big enough, even though the fans are telling you the opposite, saying, hey, we want to see the fight. Terence Crawford, he's a phenomenal fighter. We all know that. But at this point, his stock is being hit because people at this point know he's a good fighter, but need to see him in with his contemporaries and people that the people or opponents, I guess that's a better way to say it, opponents that the people feel would match his intensity and or could push him to the brink or even potentially beat him, whether they can or can't. It has to be someone who's closer to moving the needle in that direction. At the very least, I can push you and bring the best out of you, and you're gonna have to work for this performance. You know, Kell Brook, the first two rounds were really slow paced. I had Kell Brook up, but he wasn't doing anything crazy. He was swelling Crawford's eye a little bit, good jab, but it was a controlled pace. It wasn't nothing like Crawford was, you know, frantic or anything like that. And we didn't even know if Kell Brook would be able to make weight comfortably since he hadn't made the weight in 3 years since 2017 loss at welterweight against Errol Spence Jr. So you have to imagine that fights like that, there's always these little stipulations that the people who know boxing, they're gonna factor in. And I think it's safe to say Kell Brook wasn't what you would call prime to fight Terence Crawford at the point in which they fought. So you have to understand it. I agree with Shawn Porter. It is highly disrespectful that Bob Arum would publicly put out $1 million for Crawford when British fighters in America, like Amir Khan, at the time in which he fought Crawford, they said he got $5 to $8 million or so, right? They said Kell Brook reportedly got $2 million. So you have to understand that doesn't make sense. Crawford fighting two British fighters who, at the point in which they fought him, both had losses by stoppages in recent memory. Amir Khan had recently been knocked out. He was a couple fights removed, 2 fights removed from a brutal, and I repeat, brutal Canelo Alvarez knockout. So how does he get $5-8 million and you put it on pay-per-view, but Bob Arum is telling the world that Crawford and his mandatory, Shawn Porter, who pushed Errol Spence, who pushed Kell Brook, who beat Berto, beat Granados with a hand injury. We have never seen him stop. We have seen him drop by Errol Spence and Broner, but he got back up. He fought as an amateur, even at 165. He definitely has a battery in his back and an engine. So he has good stamina, good will, good willingness to compete and will to win, determined, in shape. You know, the only time I can even think where he missed weight that he made on the second attempt was the Ugas fight. That's another great name he fought. The bottom line is Shawn Porter, he's saying what I've been telling you. Shawn Porter has a better resume than Terence Crawford, especially if we're talking about the welterweight division, bar none. Shawn Porter's fought Broner, Danny Garcia, Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, Ugas. There's no comparison at all. You can't name me 5 people that I just easily name off of Shawn Porter's bill, including Berto and Granados, guys like that as well. You can't name me 5 people at the point in which Crawford fought them that you feel matched what those guys brought. Keith Thurman when Shawn Porter fought him. Keith Thurman versus Shawn Porter, I think it did like 6 million views on CBS because it was a desired fight, right? So for Bob Arum to only offer him $1 million as a starting point, that is a spit in the face. And it's funny that you heard Mikey Garcia say F Arum and you heard Keith Thurman say F Arum and he's cheap, all in the space of the same month. And Bob Arum, he was acting flabbergasted when he responded to UK media. Keep this in mind. You have an American company, an American promoter in Bob Arum. I believe he's from New York. And he's doing all these interviews with UK media, right? He's offering Kell Brook, a UK fighter, right, $2 million more than an American fighter. He's offering Amir Khan, after he got slaughtered by Canelo, another British UK fighter from Bolton, England, right? He's offering him $5-8 million, offering Shawn Porter. What part of business is that? And then he's going and replying to an American fighter, Keith Thurman, and his replies to UK media. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Now, in response to Keith Thurman, Bob Arum was acting confused as to why Keith Thurman called him cheap and stuff like that. But look at this situation. You look at this situation, how are you going to offer British fighters that at the point in which they fought, I don't have no problem with British fighters, but at the point in which they fought Crawford, they weren't considered best of. There's no way Kell Brook could even be ranked because he wasn't even fighting at welterweight. He was fighting at 150, 150 plus. And Amir Khan had beat Phil LaGreco in 38 seconds and then struggled with Samuel Vargas. And that's a guy who had already lost to Danny Garcia and Errol Spence. And then the newcomer, who's only like 23, and that's Virgil Ortiz. They all had an easy time. Amir Khan's getting hurt and dropped by him and barely winning. And that was his fight right before Crawford. You could get mad at me, but the proof is in the pudding. These are the facts. So yeah, to start the price point at 1 million, that's not going to get it done. You know, I've told you I spoke with Kenny Porter a couple weeks ago, and he said a million. They said they want the fight, but you know they're not taking $1 million. And that's the thing. Keith Thurman called Bob Arum cheap, and Bob Arum, in his response to UK media, he acted confused. Like, what does he mean? What is this guy saying? But at the same time, what Keith Thurman says looks to be true. Keith Thurman also said in his interview, and the video is on my page, so make sure you check that video. It's like Keith Thurman ethers Bob Arum or whatever it was, whatever I titled it. And Keith Thurman says you can't afford these PBC fighters. That's not our fault. He said you're not going to get the top guys at PBC for a discount. And again, Bob Arum act confused by these comments, but at the same time, it doesn't look like you can afford the PBC fighters. So I don't know if Keith Thurman was off in his suggestion or his dialogue, because if you're offering Shawn Porter the mandatory $1 million and saying let somebody else pick up the tab and let it go to purse bid and stuff, maybe you can't afford the top level PBC guys. So all in all, everything I said remains true. This is a bad look for Terence Crawford. If he stays with Top Rank, it's like what fights can we as fans really expect based on the fact that they don't have the leverage, they don't have the star power, and they got a phenomenal talent in Terence Crawford with no one to face him with. And then if you're shooting down options like Shawn Porter, telling the world that it's cool but it's not great and he's only worth $1 million, and you just watch a guy who only went 4 rounds and he got more money than that, it don't make sense. Shawn Porter is 1,000% correct. Shawn Porter, unless you could prove me wrong, Shawn Porter will give you more than 4 rounds. The reason I'm saying this is because, as I said earlier, Shawn Porter has never been stopped. Kell Brook had been stopped around that time too. He got stopped in, I think, 5 rounds with Golovkin. So if Terence Crawford is good enough to beat Shawn Porter in 4 rounds, you're gonna have to show me that, because I think Crawford is good, but I don't see him stopping Shawn Porter in the first 4 rounds. And if he can, then it's a fight that you need to make, because he'll get a lot of credit for doing so, because no one else has done that. Listen to Shawn Porter. I got some snippet, but also check his video, subscribe to his channel. And I agree with what he's saying. Like $1 million is not going to get this done. The other thing is these PBC fighters have tasted, the top level guys have tasted money. So I'm sure they're managing their finances. They got people and accountants and financial advisors and savings and, you know, different things in place. Invest in real estate, property and stocks and Bitcoin and things like that. So they're not going to just take whatever. Bob Arum has an archaic way of promoting, and I think that's becoming more and more relevant. What used to get fights done back in the day is different. They're talking about Ryan Garcia off of pure clout and Instagram fame and social media following may get a Pacquiao fight. We're in different times. Jake Paul's fighting Ben Askren. You know, you got Logan Paul fighting Floyd Mayweather. It's a different time. You got to pay like you weigh. That's what we say out here in the Bay. Let me know what you guys think. Listen to Shawn Porter. Check my past video where I posted Keith Thurman going in on Bob Arum. Again, what he's saying doesn't sound quite too far off based on the fact that it doesn't look like Crawford and Top Rank can afford the guys like Shawn Porter. And if they do, they're going to have to improve their offer. That's what it sounds like. Let me know how I did. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Until next video, is Ego signing off.
Recapping an interview that Bob Arum did on Barbershop Conversations with Fred over there. And essentially he was responding to the podcast and said that,
just keep going. Just keep going.
And said that he said, he read somewhere that you were insulted by the offer of $1 million or the amount of $1 million. And one part that was kind of funny is he said, I'm old fashioned. I don't know why $1 million would be an insult to anybody, but it's easy just to say that in a vacuum with no context and just be like, oh, it's $1 million. I mean, but obviously, so he was saying essentially that he's not going to pay you more than $1 million guaranteed. Right. Your thoughts?
I mean, I said it before on here, and I'm glad that the word is getting back to Bob that I will not fight Terence Crawford for $1 million. Of nothing, of course, nothing less than that. But I mean, and then to keep it simple, you paid Kell Brook $2 million reportedly
Yeah.
to fight Terence Crawford. What makes Kell Brook worth more than Shawn Porter at this point in time, especially here in the United States?
Yeah.
What makes you think that you can give him that kind of, tell you guys what it was? What makes you think you can give Kell Brook $2 million and not feel that a fight with Shawn Porter is exciting enough to be paid more, is going to get you enough revenue that you can pay Shawn Porter and Terence Crawford more than you paid Terence and myself? Kell Brook getting $2 million. Like, what makes you think that you can offer me $1 million and it's okay, it's acceptable here in the United States? And I get it. For a lot of people, $1 million is a lot of money. However, when I've been in this sport, as long as I've been in it and I've been able to make the money that I've been able to make, I understand the business of boxing at this point and understand that to even begin negotiations at $2 million is an insult. And everybody in the sport of boxing knows that the welterweight division is the hottest division in boxing, and if anything, second to heavyweight. But we command a lot of money, we command a lot of attention, and this fight will do all of that and more. And for him to say that he's old fashioned and he doesn't think that $1 million is not chump change. It's not chump change to somebody else, but to Shawn Porter, it's chump change. So here's the thing: you offer Kell Brook $2 million because you knew that $2 million will get Kell Brook in the ring. You knew that Kell Brook had not been in the ring in some time, and that $2 million was enough for him. It's not enough for Shawn Porter. However, you know the only way you can stay away from Shawn Porter and try to justify it is by saying $1 million is not chump change. I'm paraphrasing, but
yeah.
You know, for you to say $1 million isn't chump change or is a lot more money than most people would consider, or whatever, however he worded it, not for me. And you know that, and you know the only reason why you would offer me, if you are willing to offer me only $1 million, is because you really don't want Terence Crawford to have that fight. And you know that I'm going to say no. And you're going to tell people, well, you know, $1 million is a whole lot of money. He's got a couple of losses and he doesn't have any belts. And where's the risk and the reward? And so I can say everything that you're going to say, Bob. I know everything that you're going to say. I understand it. However, it's not acceptable. It doesn't make sense. And I can guarantee that if there's fans in the stands, we will fill up whatever stadium you want to take the fight to. And if we do it on pay-per-view, we're going to sell more pay-per-views than Terence Crawford's ever sold before, because now he's fighting Shawn Porter, and I am a pay-per-view draw.
And also his follow-up essentially was that you should work with him on a deal on upside, that if you think you can get fans in the seats and get viewers, work with a deal to get kickback on that rather than more guaranteed purse. So
I saw that.
That's which is
yeah. I mean, I saw that, and excuse me, that happens a lot in pay-per-view deals where you have the upfront money and then you have an incentive on the back end for the pay-per-views. Been there, done that, and I dig it. However, the only way I can get in the ring is if it's worth my while. I know what I can do and I know what I can guarantee, but it takes two to make it happen. If I'm the only one getting out there working and dealing to make this fight as big as it can be, and you got another guy who's not willing to go where I'm willing to go or do the things that I'm willing to do to sell this, and then you're looking up and the fight didn't sell as good as, well, Shawn Porter guaranteed it was going to sell X amount. Well, Shawn Porter essentially did it all by himself, you know? So don't tell me you're going to offer me upside incentives if you're not going to make both fighters do what it takes to publicize this fight and promote this fight and make it happen. And then on top of that, if you're not doing it yourself and leaving it all up to Shawn Porter, that's what do they call that? I'm setting myself up for failure.
Yeah, especially I'm glad that you mentioned kind of the side of promoting it, which obviously that was where the upside comes from. For me, if you're Bob Arum, you can't say both. You can't talk about how, okay, well, you make money on the back end on the upside, but then last year when Terence Crawford's fighting Kell Brook, you keep saying Terence Crawford doesn't promote. I can't make money on his fights. Mm-hmm. So you're saying Yeah, well, he should do it on the upside. I can't make any money on Terence Crawford fights, but Shawn Porter should rely on that rather than me guaranteeing money up front. It doesn't make any sense.
So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxingego, the future of boxing.